The majority of Americans believe police reform needs to take place in the United States. A YouGov poll done earlier this year found that 89% of respondents said that there should be changes within police departments in the United States. But what would it look like if we took it a step further? What if communities policed themselves? I'm asking because that's what happened several times a year in Brownsville, a neighborhood in Brooklyn. Joining me now to discuss what happened and why it's provocative is political strategist Charlene Carruthers. She is the founding national director of Black Youth Project 100 and author of Unapologetic, a Black, queer, and feminist mandate for radical movements. Charlene, good to see you as always. You know, this idea of police reform is one thing, but many of us, yourself and myself included, have talked beyond reform. Reform is not enough. We've talked about radical solutions, and one of those radical solutions is abolition. And part of abolition is reimagining what safety looks like, and that might include communities policing themselves. Is Brownsville part of that? Is Brownsville an example of that to you?
Well, first, thanks for having me today to talk about this. When I first heard about the story in Brownsville, I was intrigued, like I always am when I hear or learn about an experiment in doing something that is about safety beyond policing. And so the short answer is yes, Brownsville and the experiment that has taken place or is taking place in Brownsville is a part of this long-term vision that says we can create safety in our communities without prisons, policing, or state punishment or structural punishment, right? That's the short answer. The long answer is, how do we even reframe how we cultivate safety in our communities beyond any form of policing?
That's an important point. Part of it is, it sounds like you're saying it's not policing, but it's interesting that the only way that we can describe, the only language we have available to describe, you know, taking care of ourselves, looking out for each other, creating senses of safety and security is to call it policing. And like you said, right. It sounds like policing is something else than what's happening here. For example, the civilians who volunteer in Brownsville, they're not arresting people. They can't arrest anybody, right?
Exactly. They can't arrest folks. From what I understand, what has happened is that they could see two or more people in an altercation and they will step in, or they'll come in and they'll intervene and de-escalate. Or if someone is going into a store to likely take something that they need that is like criminalized as shoplifting, they can intervene at that point. Or if someone is in a mental health crisis, they can literally, a part of this project sat with a person in the middle, a Black woman in the middle of a mental health crisis, just sat with her. And that prevented the calling of police, that prevented this person from going to jail in the middle of a crisis after being pushed out of a car. So it's something that isn't just about how we come in and arrest people. We arrest people or like literally beat them to stop them from doing something or detain them. But how do we just sit with someone to de-escalate and then also provide them with what they actually need in order to thrive and not just survive?
I mean, that's super important. And of course, in the Brownsville case, there are still police officers who are around in case there's an emergency. But there's something instructive, even for folk who don't go as far as you or me in terms of abolition here. They were able to resolve these issues without calling the police. So even if you believe that police need to be called sometimes, even if you believe that we can never get rid of police, it seems to me that this at least offers an example of what's possible when the first thing you do and the second thing you do might not be to call an armed police officer.
Absolutely. And I'm not from Missouri, so you ain't got to always show me everything in order for me to believe it. But everyday people deserve to be able to see examples of what is possible to deal with conflict, violence, and harm in our communities without policing or police officers or anyone designated as law enforcement. And this example in Brownsville is, I think, an important example for our people to say, hey, this is one possibility for our folks. What else is possible? What else is possible when we say who, like they did in Brownsville, I keep saying Brownsville because I'm from Chicago, so it's like a slip of the tongue. But Brownsville in Brooklyn, New York, uh, if they ask, who do you all trust? Who do you all think can actually be a part of this program that can come to folks' support in any instance of conflict or harm or even violence? And they identify those people. Those people exist in communities across this country. What would be possible if those folks were funded instead of law enforcement agencies were funded? The people who we trusted in our communities to help take care of people and also to intervene when conflict, harm, or violence are occurring, because they occur in our communities that are under-resourced and over-policed every single day. That's what we've seen in Brownsville, and I think we deserve to see more examples like that in our communities across this country.
There are going to be people watching this show, because I get the letters and the emails from them all the time, and they're going to say, well, whatever lessons y'all learned in Brownsville, whatever the people were doing to make people feel good and safe and trustworthy and trusted and cared for and loved and all that stuff, why can't the police just learn to do that? What do we say?
Well, what I would say to that is that we have literally well over 100 years of examples of policing receiving millions upon millions upon millions of dollars. In Chicago alone, we're talking billions of dollars. And I'm not exaggerating. Y'all can look up the numbers. It's about $1.5 million a day that's spent just on policing. And time again, we've seen that law enforcement officers do not show up to do what they say to do, serve and protect everyday people in our communities. We've seen example after example of, yes, police killings and murders, but also harassment, sexual assault, misuse of funds, corruption, a myriad of things that I think everyday folks are aware of, but oftentimes are not provided or presented with alternatives or other options. So we can no longer say nothing else is possible. We can look at just 5 days in Brooklyn, New York, and see what else is possible for our people. That's what we have before us. So why not try something else than what we've done over and over? And we is a big word, because it's like, who are the we in this situation? But what's been done over and over again. I'm here in Atlanta, Georgia right now, where people are currently engaged in a fight to stop our city and to stop the deforestation and destruction of Wolani Forest. And they're saying, we just want to train more cops. But we know also evidence shows that training of police officers has consistently not stopped them from killing people.
History, if nothing else, to your point, history shows that, policing is not the answer, and we have no reason to believe that we can suddenly police our way out of the problems that we have, because it's never worked before. Anyway, political strategist Charlene Carruthers is brilliant, y'all. We love her. Charlene, thank you so much for joining me. But make sure you check out her book. It's called Unapologetic, a Black, Queer, and Feminist Mandate for Radical Movements. Of course, it's available anywhere that books are sold, but we always encourage you to support your local Black bookstore.